All right, one of my favorite units in AP Environmental Science, Earth Systems. Weathering and Soil Science. By the end of this presentation, you should understand how weathering and erosion occur and how they contribute to the element cycle and soil formation. Also be able to explain how soil forms and describe its characteristics. And describe how humans extract elements and minerals and the social and environmental consequences of these. Soil is a combination of geologic and organic material, and it forms a dynamic membrane over the surface of Earth. And a variety of processes happen that occur in just only the soil. It basically connects overlaying biology with the underlying geology. And so we will explore the weathering of rocks that leads to the formation of soil and the development of specific soil horizons. And we'll discuss some physical and chemical and even biological processes that take place actually in the soil. And we'll also examine the human activity, of course, that degrades these soils, including mining. We have seen that the rock forms beneath Earth's surface under intense heat and pressure, or actually both heat and pressure, technically. When rock is exposed at Earth's surface, it begins to break down through the process of weathering and erosion. And this process, there's components of the rock cycle, returning chemical elements and rock fragments to the crust by depositing them as sediments throughout the hydraulic cycle. And so this physical breakdown and chemical alteration of rock begins the rock cycle all over again. And without this part of the rock cycle, elements would never be recycled and the soils would not be present. Weathering occurs when rock is exposed to air, water, certain chemicals, biological agents, plants, lichens, animals, especially burrowing animals. Now, there are two major categories of weathering. We basically break it down to physical and chemical. And there's some also that work as a combination of those two to degrade rock. Physical weathering is a mechanical breakdown of rock and mineral. And physical weathering can be caused by water, soil, and variation in temperatures, like seasonal freeze-thaw cycles, that type of thing. When water works its way into cracks or fissures in rock, it can remove loose material and widen that crack. Chemical weathering is the breakdown of rock and minerals by a chemical reaction process, and that's dissolving of chemical elements in the rock. It also releases essential nutrients from the rocks, making them available for like plants and other organisms to use. Now, chemical weathering occurs most rapidly on newly exposed material than it does the older materials. For example, when feldspar is exposed to acid rain, it essentially forms a clay and it releases these ions like potassium and essential nutrients for plants. And then lichens can break down rock in a similar way by producing these actual weak acids in their tissues. So some chemical weathering is a result of human activity, right? For example, sulfur that's emitted into the atmosphere from fossil fuel combustion combines with oxygen to form sulfur dioxide. And that sulfur dioxide reacts with water vapor in the atmosphere to form sulfuric acid. We call that acid rain or acid precipitation. And so this precipitation has a high sulfuric acid and nitric acid concentration, and it reacts with water vapor and other sulfurs and nitrogen oxides in the atmosphere. And so here in this picture, you can see physical weathering. So rock number A, water can work its way into cracks and where it can like wash away loose material, and then that water like freezes, and basically when it freezes, it expands, and so it can widen the cracks. And so B is a growing plant, and a growing plant can force its way into rock sections, root, and grow, forcing the rock to come apart. Biological agents can also cause physical weathering. just as well as non-biological things, as this illustration shows. Even burrowing animals may also contribute to the breakdown of rock material. Although their contributions can be relatively minor, it does occur. Physical weathering exposes more surface area and makes rocks more vulnerable, and so, creatures can get to them. We've seen that physical and chemical weathering results in the breakdown and chemical alteration of rock. Erosion, however, is the physical removal of rock fragments like sediment, soil, rock, and other particles from the landscape or from the ecosystem. Erosion is usually the result of two mechanisms. In one mechanism, wind, water, and ice move soil and other materials to a downslope. They creep in and pull material down, and due to the force of gravity. And a second system, living organisms like animals that burrow under the soil, cause erosion. After eroded material has traveled a certain distance from its actual source, it starts to accumulate and forming these deposits. And so, depositing of eroded material like sediments and rock fragments or soil is just part of the natural erosion process.